of it, what we believe that will help us not only promote Namibia there globally, but now the people that we are talking to about Namibia, they don't need to come to Namibia only as investors. They can come and visit as business tourists. And we believe that if they come to Namibia as business tourists, it will be easy, of course, to convert them into investors. So you might have seen that there has been a lot of increased activities in terms of conferences. Yes, we know that there is many of our, especially state-owned enterprises, there is many of our private sector players who are holding quite a number of conferences. But we want to see how can we have a coordinating support for people that are hosting events. So we have now signed up with the international body that looks after convention bureaus so that we can become a member, and that means we will then attract more events. So just in the past 2 months, we at the NIPDB, we have worked together with various partners to hosting events like the Namibia Oil and Gas Conference. Yes. We have hosted recently the Global Africa Hydrogen Summit. Then we have hosted the Africa MSME Summit. And we are probably seeing more events coming, and that is really promoting Namibia globally. Because, for example, if you look at the oil and gas and the hydrogen summit, we had more than 1,000 attendees, and of that 1,000 attendees, of course, about 60% will be non-Namibians, and most of them came to Namibia for a 3-day event, but they stayed for 2 weeks. So they're exploring Namibia. So then they combine this business tourism with leisure tourism. And when they go back, many of them say, I will come back with my family, or I already brought somebody. So those are some of the activities.
Right. Now, you've heard from the CEO of Namibia. She's quite passionate about taking the brand Namibia globally, and so should we all be. And yes, indeed, you are still tuned into the Public Enterprises Information Sharing Session for this Monday morning. I am here in studio with the chairperson, who is also the CEO of NIPDB. And she's here to help unpack the topic on the strategy of, the strategy to diversify the Namibian economy and improving the ease of doing business in Namibia. And you too can be part of the conversation, Namibia, by following the discussion on our social media platforms. As earlier mentioned, on Facebook, we are at the Ministry of Information and Communications Technology. We are streaming the show live there. Alternatively, you can also stream us live on our YouTube channel, and our handle there is MICT Namibia. Be part of the conversation. It's quite critical. We all should be ambassadors of taking the brand Namibia globally. Now, back into the studio, or to the questions, Ms. Wanja. For interest's sake, Namibia is constantly competing with over 200 countries to attract investors. I know you've briefly touched on it, but what do we perhaps need to do as a country to, or to have in place to retain quality investment and of choice? Pardon me.
No, thank you very much. So I think that is a very, very good question, because countries, just like companies, they compete. Capital is limited. It's not that there is just a lot of capital out there, a lot of ideas out there, and therefore they will just start to flow. And yes, we are. Somebody recently said, Namibia as a country, we are special. Nobody can deny that.
Right.
But another thing that we need to accept as Namibians, the person said, is that we are not unique. So we are special, but we are not unique. Most of what we have, other people have. And therefore, we need to make sure that we organize ourselves. But beyond organization, there are things that investors are looking for. So the World Bank had a kind of a survey to investors, asking them, what are they looking for? And I will mention a few, but let's start with one thing. One of the top things investors are looking for is skills. Contrary to popular belief, that we believe that investors want to bring foreign nationals to Namibia, investors, when they come to the country, they want to employ local people because, of course, it is feasible, it is more affordable, and it's just more logical. So nobody wants to just take people from somewhere and then uproot them somewhere, bring them here. So investors want skills.
Right.
And therefore, as a country, we need to focus on skills. Now, many times when we look at market and labor, we kind of solve what they call the supply side of labor. And the supply side of labor is when we say, we've got many unemployed youth, look for jobs for them. There is nothing wrong with that. But what we also need to look at, and that is what we are starting to do at NIPDB, is saying, what are the sectors that we have? Look at labor from the demand side and said, what demand do we have for labor?
Right.
And what demand should we have for labor? And therefore, we are working on a concept together with the International Labour Organization on something they call skills for trade and economic diversification. So one of the things that we are driving as NIPDB is an economic diversification. And maybe I'm just retracting myself a bit. And it is really important to note that, and my answer will tie into that one, because when the president created NIPDB, what we were told by somebody like the Harvard Growth Lab is that our economy is not diversified. When we were growing between 2000 and 2014, we were dependent a lot on commodities that are exported in their raw forms. We were dependent on government spending, tenders. And then we were dependent on what they call non-tradables, construction, whether it is construction, makeup, salon, and so forth. So that is non-tradable. So the economy was growing on those three. And they said, with that, the economy growing on that, we need to diversify. And when we diversify, we need to diversify by also making more complex goods. And therefore, because of that lack of diversification, we could train engineers, but our economy could not produce jobs for those engineers. And therefore, we have engineers, we have got chemists, we have got marine biologists that have gone to university but are not employed. But also they are not skilled, because skill and qualification are different. So, and it's therefore important to make sure that, yes, you have got people that have gone to university. After university, how do you help them build skills? The programs that we have, for example, as I'm a chartered accountant, and I respect the program we went through. One of the best programs we have in the country is when you train chartered accountants. There is a given process. You finish university, you enter, you've got a 3-year program that is set out. Year 1, you do A, B, C, D. Year 2, you do A, B, C, D. Year 3, you do. At the end of year 3, you are a chartered accountant and you are skilled and you are in demand in the market. I think the legal fraternity has got the same. The medical fraternity has got the same. People that are trained as soldiers in the army, they've got the same. But beyond that, many other professions might not have. Of course, engineers have got the same and so forth. But then the point is, if we look at, for example, accountants, because, yes, auditing is a mandatory service, the demand is there, and therefore we were able to train such. The legal firm is the same. But for others, the demand is not there. So how do we create demand for the skills? But then it's what they call the chicken and egg. The investor wants to find skills. You need to develop the skills that are required by investors. But yes, one of the first things that we need to do is to build skills. But then we need to first set sectors. What are the priority sectors? What will be the skills that are required in those priority sectors? And we build those skills. Of course, the other things are what we already have in place as Namibia. The rule of law is Namibia is very well known for that one. But then other things that we have is policy, and that is where we have a gap. We have got a gap in terms of policy that is required. And then we have got a gap in terms of ease of doing business. Investors, when they come, and this is something that we found, they said they don't want to be moved from polar to post. They want to know that there is a process that is clear, that is understood, that is predictable, that I apply for this permit, it takes 3 months and I will get it, or I will get an answer as to yes or no. But if it's you apply and then you wait for it for how many months, you don't know if it's coming, you don't know what you need to do for you to get it or not to get it, the expectations or the requirements are not clear.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we need to set in place.
Right.
And then, of course, we need infrastructure. Yes, of course, in terms of roads, Namibia has got the best roads in Africa. We have got a good port, but one of the most important things is about the cost of doing business. And in transport, of course, rail is preferred, and we therefore need to work on our rail. We need to make sure that electricity is affordable. We need to make sure that water is there. We need to make sure that technology is affordable. So the affordability of infrastructure is also something that plays a role. And then, of course, you need to get a market size.
Right.
And because Namibia doesn't have a market size, many times when we go internationally and we want to attract investors, they ask you, what is your population? 2 million. Okay. Then they speak to somebody else whose population is. So now that we don't have a population, we cannot afford to be lagging in other areas.
Right.
So we need to tell people, we do not have the population, but we have got A, B, C, D. And therefore, that is our competitive advantage. And again, that's why I said Namibia is an export play, and that's where then we need to make sure that we enter into various protocols that will enable Namibian-made goods and services to be exported. And that's why one of the roles that we are playing is playing as NIPDB. We have realized without working in the export arena, it will be challenging for us to attract investment, because when we speak to investors, they need to ask us about market. And because our market size is small, we need to tell them, if you invest in Namibia, you can sell to SACU. It's 80 million people. And if we can talk about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, that is also an advantage. And that's why Namibia has to make sure that the point that we say we are a friend to all, an enemy to none, we need to make sure that those relationships we use to the benefit of opening up markets. So yes, there's quite a number of areas and a number of criteria that one need to consider for you to be a competitive economy. I think we are doing well in some. There is a few where we still need to work together as a public sector, as private sector, to do better to make sure that we attract investments.
Right. It's better late than never, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Now, Ms. Wanja, for interest's sake, since the establishment of NIPDB, has there been any notable difference in foreign direct investment?
So that one, I think maybe I will. There was a question by somebody in the newspaper recently, and they asked, where is Nangula's billions?
Right.
so it was a very interesting question, but the only thing I thought, I say, my brother, I would have appreciated that you ask me the question.
Right. Directly. So
you ask me the question before you go to paper, so that I can at least have an opportunity to answer.
Right.
Instead, so that by the time you go to the paper, you have given me an opportunity to answer.
Respond,
but let me use this opportunity to answer that question. And I think there's a graph that my team shows. And normally, I'm an accountant, so I see in pictures, I think in pictures and numbers, and that's where I look. And that is a graph of Namibia's foreign direct investment between 2009 and 2023. Now, I am not claiming that to be Nangula's billions. I am saying that is Namibia's billions, to which I believe NIPDB, where Nangula is working, has contributed significantly. And I hope, like many people will say, let the numbers speak, and hopefully those numbers are speaking. And with anything, many people will always argue, but every time there is a but, then there will always be a but. So since 2009, we were in office from 2021, and that is still, COVID is still here with us, but we can see from 2021, we can all see what that graph tells us, where the FDI is.
Right.
So that says that just last year, which is 2023, the foreign direct investment flow into Namibia was about, that is in the region about 43 billion. And yes, there is foreign direct investment coming through from oil and gas. Yes, that year was abnormal also because we had Heineken that bought into the Namibia breweries, and that brought quite a number of money into Namibia. But you can see from 2021 to 2022 to 2023, for the last 3 years that NIPDB has been in office, the value of the value of foreign direct investment has been in billions, and it has been higher than all the past years since 2009. Right. So I will say I rest my case, but that is the figures. And one can talk about the next one. You can say, okay, let's look at what is there. So in the those last 3 years, the total foreign direct investment was about 73 billion. That 73 billion, what we have heard from the bank, only about 33 billion relates to oil and gas. Because we say, most of it is in oil and gas. So about 33 billion relate to oil and gas. So about 40 billion relate to other sectors. And that one, if you look at it, of the 40 billion, it will still be probably much more than most of these other 10 years combined. When you put all those 10 years combined, part of it will, the 40 billion will still be more than those years put together. Now, yes, mining is included there. So what are the things that are changing? And I think this is maybe to clear what people sometimes do not understand about NIPDB and investment. We do two things. Number one is attract investment. Number two is facilitate investment. So there is an investment that we are not claiming that NIPDB is the one who brought Shell to Namibia, or NIPDB brought Total Energies to Namibia, or NIPDB brought Osino Gold to Namibia. We are not claiming that. But what we can say is, working together with other ministries, the government has really tried to bring the services to investors in a centralized place where the support that is needed to Total Energies, to Osino Gold, to whoever, all the project has been fast-tracked. And that is most of our work at NIPDB is really supporting the fast track of this project. Some of them, yes, it's projects that we found in the ecosystem. And it's projects where the support were going slow because the investor has to move from one place to another place to another place. But now there is a central support structure where investors are coming. And when investors are coming to that support structure, we are now able to say, investor, you do what you do best, while we work together with the Ministry of Agriculture, while we work together with the Ministry of Mines and Energy, while we work together with the Ministry of Home Affairs, while we work together with the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade, working together with all other ministries to make sure that service delivery to the private sector is improved. So most of that figures that is coming there is coming from that. The second one, so improved service delivery, it is not where we want it to be, but we are tracking it, we are pushing for it, and we are seeing the turnaround improving. And I believe that money is starting to flow because of that improved service delivery. The second one is, yes, it is the messaging that we are sending out. The fact that we are out there saying Namibia is a good place, come and do business in Namibia. We are seeing more and more investors, and they don't need to report to NIPDB. They just need to come to Namibia. And again, it's not a message of NIPDB, it's a message of Namibia. Whether it is His Excellency the President traveling, whether it is the Green Hydrogen Commissioner and the team that is traveling, whether it is various ministers, Minister of Finance, the National Planning Commission, everybody pulling together in the same direction. And yes, when they pull together, investors come to NIPDB, we support them, but it's about the ecosystem. It's not about NIPDB, it's not... If NIPDB is here and we go to Ministry of Agriculture or Ministry of Mines and Energy or Fisheries and say, can we do ABCD? And they say no, that figures will be zero. So it requires a whole ecosystem, it requires trust. And that is where the figures are coming from. And like I said, I think with regard to the billions, I think I raised my case. The billions have come into Namibia. And that is one side of the billions. The other side of the billions are now projects that people come. And it's not yet money that has flown. Some money has flown. And they come and they say, okay, we want to set up. So let us talk about, for example, projects such as Osino Gold. It's one of the projects that are currently going on. And there's actually quite a number of mining projects that are going. So those ones, they tell you, by the time we develop Osino Gold, it will cost 4 billion. Now they come and they register the project with NIPDB for facilitation services. And they say, we would like to get your support in getting permits, in working together to make sure that this project that has got the potential of creating 1,000 jobs for Namibia, or another project, it's a project we call Namibia Berries. It's in Divundu. Currently, they have only harvested about 20 hectares, and they are already employing plus minus 300 Namibians. So those projects, they come to NIPDB and say, we want to do ABCD, we want to register so that you can support us by providing and coordinating the services of government to us. So we work with them. Those projects are what we say we put in our pipeline. So Osino, Kelp Blue, Divundu, High Iron, and many others, they are in our pipeline. We are not saying, oh, these are NIPD projects. No, these are project investors came to us, they want service, we put them. Now, those projects that we have there, they are now the ones that we are saying that the Namibian dollar value of those projects is lying at, let's say, just over 170 billion Namibian dollars. Now, the sooner all of us as Namibians, and specifically public sector, work together to support those projects, the sooner they can create jobs for Namibians. So we are now supporting them. They are in our pipeline. Some of those projects have converted, and their billions are included in the ones that you saw on the graph. Some of them are still in the pipeline. Like when we say Osino has got 4 billions, those 4 billions are not yet here, but they will definitely be here. I think you have seen the transaction. A project like Namib Berries, that one, the billions has started to flow because they have already invested, but most of it is not yet here. Project like Pyro CSS NAM, they have started to come in. Project like Kelp Blue, they've started to come in. Project like High Iron, some have started to come in. So project like Hyphen, we have not included it in our pipeline because the numbers are very huge. They have not yet started to come in, but those are the projects that we're talking about. So when you hear us saying about 170 billions, it's a particular project that is there, that we have assigned. It's got a sector, and we are working with the project developers and with other offices, ministries, agencies, to see how can we fast track the conversion of this project to be realized so that we can create jobs for Namibia.
Right. Namibia, the conversation is quite interesting here in studio, and I'm actually empowered this morning to learn from the CEO all these great terminologies and processes and procedures with regards to the NIPDB. Now, Namibia, you too can be part of the conversation by joining or following the discussions on our social media platforms. As earlier mentioned, we are streaming the show live on our Facebook page, and we are at MICT, which is Ministry of Information and Communications Technology. Alternatively, you can also stream us live on our YouTube channel, and our handle there is MICT Namibia. Do post your questions in the comment sections and get your responses from the horse's mouth. The chairperson and CEO is here in studio with me. Now, Ms. Wanja, let's just move on to the NIPDB's newly signed MOU with NEMRA quickly. It has surfaced in the media recently that the NIPDB has signed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding with NEMRA. Briefly talk to us about this strategic purpose or significance of this MOU, and whilst they briefly indicate what other OMAs you work closely with, because earlier on we've mentioned NEMRA, and maybe if you can just briefly touch on which other OMAs you work in close collaboration with.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you very much. So I think if you look at NIPDB, and maybe one of the reasons that we were placed in the office of the president is exactly the fact that we need to work with all ministries. So we have got economic ministries, and we have got non-economic sectoral ministries, and all of them are driving economic growth. And because of that, you need to have one person who is helping to coordinate government's response to the private sector. And that's why the president then decided to create NIPDB, which is in his office, and therefore supporting or facilitating the services of government by all ministries and OMAs to the private sector. So we have got then a one-stop center, and it is really at that one-stop center where we have got about 9 entities that we believe these are the main
Doing
9
business has
entities
never been easier to
that
improve the
render
ease of doing
services
business.
to the,
And now,
to
the
the private
Namibia
sector.
Investment
Of
Promotion
course,
and
all
Development
ministries
Board
do,
has
but
made
there
it
is
even easier for
specific
investors
ones
to
that
do
are
business in the
involved.
country.
And it starts
with the launch
with
of the One-Stop
business
Center.
intellectual
The One-Stop Center is a state-of-the-art facility
BIPA.
that
So
connects
business and
investors to
intellectual
all key
property
business
authority,
agencies in the
where
country.
you need to
Our
register companies.
experienced
And we have got,
representatives are here
of
to
all
guide
of
you
those
through
9,
every step
we
of the
have
process,
signed
ensuring
a memorandum of
compliance
understanding
with all
now with
relevant
8.
policies
We only
and
have
legal
1 pending.
requirements.
So
The One-Stop
Namra was
Center
the 8th,
offers
and
a
we've
wide
got 1
range of
pending.
services,
So, and it
from
is really
registration of
again to
defensive
make sure
names,
that all
private
of
and
us
public
as
corporations,
ministries,
to
as
issuing
offices and
various
agencies,
importation
we all
permits related to
understand that yes,
plants,
we have got
animals, and
different
phytosanitary
mandates,
certificates.
but they are
The One-Stop Center
complementary
is
as
to
much as they
enhance
could
the
be
ease of
different.
doing business.
So when you look
It
at
aims
us
to
as a
streamline
Namra,
and simplify
Namra wants
the
to make sure
investment
that
process
investors
for
are paying
potential
their fair share.
investors. Its
But
primary
also,
purpose is to
for
provide
Namra
a
to
single
collect
point
taxes,
of contact
they need to
and a
increase their
centralized
tax
location
base.
for
If there are
investors
no
to obtain
business in
information,
Namibia,
guidance and
then there will be
assistance
no
through the
taxpayers.
investment life
So
cycle. It
Namra is
helps
saying,
facilitate
NIPDB,
interactions
please help
between
us attract
investors and
investors
relevant
so that we can
authorities,
increase the number of
ensuring
people that are paying
efficient and timely
taxes, so
processing
that
of
those that are paying
applications,
taxes
permits,
individually and
and
so on, we can pay less taxes.
The
But when you
representation
do
of the
so,
public
please make sure
entities
that
in
they
the
comply
One-Stop
with the law.
Center,
And we are
house
working
the
with Namra
Ministry
and
of
say,
Home
Namra,
Affairs,
please help
Immigration,
us make
Safety
sure
and
that
Security.
as
We
we
have
increase
BIPA,
these numbers
business
of
and
people that are paying
intellectual
taxes,
property
make sure that your
authority.
service
We have
delivery to them is fast and it's efficient and it's effective, and therefore let's work together. So Namra has joined hands with us. They will be at the one-stop center, and so are the other ministries. So we know that Ministry of Mines and Energy it's a big one. The biggest one is actually Home Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs,
Right.
Immigration, Safety and Security, because and they were the ones that they set up first in the one-stop center, and they are the ones that we are working very, very closely with. Okay. So we have got City of Windhoek, because many investors are coming to the city, and because of fitness of certificate, we've got agriculture. We have got, like I mentioned earlier, Ministry of Mines and Energy. We have got somebody like NIDA. So those are some of the institutions that we are working with. But we see, for example, Ministry of Fisheries. That is also not every day, but it's also an institution that we are working with. And yes, we are in touch with all other ministries, Works and Transport, and then we are also in touch with others like NAMPORT, TransNamib, everybody that renders services to investors. Right. We are working with them to make sure that we improve our service delivery.
Okay. Now we are slowly but surely running out of time. In fact,
Yes.
it's almost, yeah. So briefly, Ms. Wanja, you have earlier indicated that the NIPD is tasked with the responsibility to coordinate the diversification of the Namibian economy. Yeah. Briefly explain what this really means, like in layman's term, maybe with practical examples, what it really means.
Okay. So practical examples. We had COVID. COVID meant there is zero tourism.
Right.
So if we have got many people, and let's say our economy is highly dependent on tourism, then that means that at that time, the economy just goes down. Because everybody who is employed in tourism loses their job. And when you do not have employment, no taxes, no transactions, and therefore the economy dies. Right. So now we want to say, like I mentioned earlier, Namibia was dependent on raw materials. When the prices of raw materials and commodity goes down, the economy is impacted. So what we now want to do is, instead of the economy being dependent on 1, 2, 3 items, we need to diversify the economy so that we have got more sectors, and it's like the sources of our income is diverse. When one of the economy or one of the sectors suffer, the other sectors can keep us holding. So if COVID comes and tourism cannot work, then agriculture and maybe if we are in automotive industry and we are in adding value to critical raw materials and every other sectors, they will kind of keep us holding. If drought comes and agriculture is not performing, then business, tourism, and others will keep us holding. So how do we diversify our economy? And we identified sectors. Of course, we know that energy is a sector that we need to drive.
Right.
Mining is a sector that we need to drive. Tourism, both business and leisure, is a sector that we need to drive. Agriculture is a sector that we need to drive. But then, of course, we need to look at services. And if we can make Namibia a service hub where you almost like what we call a back office. A country like Mauritius is established in what we call business process outsourcing and global services. So how can we as Namibia develop capabilities to offer almost like a back office for companies that are even in Germany or in Europe or in America or somewhere else doing the services here for those companies? We don't need to travel, and therefore we make our economy more resilient to internal and external shocks. So if shocks come and they shock one part of the economy, we will be able to stand because there are other pillars that are carrying the economy. And that is really what we need to do. So yes, transport and logistics and other things. So we are doing what we call productivity task forces, looking at the film, looking at automotive, looking at various sectors that we are looking at and supporting the government to drive.
Right. Now, lastly, before we, there is a high interest of oil and gas, and of course the new kid on the block, which is green hydrogen.
Yes.
There is so much local content to unpack. What does this mean? And as a chairperson, how would you advise a local business person to prepare themselves to leverage in these current and emerging opportunities?
So that is an interesting one because my first meeting this morning, I had a meeting with a few of my colleagues that come from cross-department. And I was telling them that, of course, we have all noted with concern that most of the investors that are approaching us, people that are identifying projects in Namibia, are foreign nationals.
Right.
And we cannot have an economy that is just foreign nationals. So yes, we have got the MSME department, and our MSME department is focused on helping Namibian MSMEs. And we are seeing traction there. But I'm looking at it and I'm saying, guys, we are not going fast enough. So we need to come up with a strategy that is not only looking at MSME department, but we employed one of our managers that we employed recently. We said she's responsible for public investment and local content. And therefore, as NIPDB, we have been doing activities and talking about how to support MSMEs, how to support Namibian businesses, but we need now to make it more solid by coming up with a particular program and a particular project that is driving the almost like whether it is the establishment of Namibian businesses. How do we come up to deliberately, because it looks like our people are not seeing where the opportunities are.
Right.
We are the ones who are working with investors. How do we identify these opportunities and take them to the Namibian people? So yes, it starts with the mining database where we are now telling people, here is a mining database, mining input database. Please look at what products are being demanded. So we now want to take that to various institutions, various sectors, so that we can work together with chambers and associations to rather look for opportunities. Because Namibian asking, where do we plug in? Probably the wrong question, but the point is, let us just work together to look for the research and saying, here are the opportunities. Now we need entrepreneurs to find how do we seize these opportunities.
Right.
So for us as NIPDB is to identify, and what we will do is then identify those opportunities, and we are working at creating an information portal that we will be pushing that opportunities to Namibians, and we will take it to the regions and say, here, and we are going to start working with governors, put that information portal at the regional offices and ask Namibians to go there so that they can see where the opportunities are. And hopefully their entrepreneurial skills will then kick in and see how they can take advantage of those opportunities.
And pick the low-hanging fruit.
And pick the low-hanging fruits, yes.
Right. Okay, now, Chairperson, we've come to the conclusion of today's discussion.
Yes.
I'd like to pause here and thank you immensely with your group, your well-versed professionals, that your management, of course, at NIPDB, that is behind you, rallying behind you to make sure that you promote the Namibian brand, like we used to say, taking the brand Namibia globally. The hard work that you are doing is not going unnoticed. We are acknowledging and we are seeing. Of course, it was quite evident that the billions that have, surfaced between now when you took office or when the NIPDB was established to where it is now. It's quite evident, and we applaud you very much on behalf of many Namibians. Of course, I would like to pause here and thank you very much for coming today to the GIC to school us very much in the business of NIPDB and all the business ventures out there that we as Namibians can really, tap in. I want to thank you really very much, and please do not get tired of us. We will keep knocking on your doors, and but of course you are always responsive, and of course you will come to our aid.
Eleni, it was great to spend the hour or so with you. Right. Thank you for the opportunity to NIPDB to explain to you what we do and how we believe that we, together with all fellow Namibians, we can really work together to fight the evils of unemployment, inequalities, and poverty, and make sure that one day we can say that every Namibian who's looking for a job has got opportunity to get a job, and every Namibian can go to bed having something, a meal in the evening, and shelter. That is really the dream that we want. Namibia that is not only free in terms of political, but also in terms of economy. We want that freedom.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, Namibia, that is all the time we had for today's discussion. Please be part of our family here at the GIC. Follow us on our social media platforms. And do not forget, as Namibians, we should all go out there and rally behind the NIPDB to take the brand Namibia globally. Until next time, from myself, Hileni Felepe-Samunyela, and the entire GIC production crew, take care, Namibia.